don't think anything in my life has replicated that feeling of just that initial learning phase and, oh my God, this routine. And it's just like a special period that I would hope people who are new listening to this can take the time to really appreciate that phase, because it only happens once.
Exactly. Like, I mean, as a coach, I deal with this a lot with, the younger bodybuilders. Like, they're just so eager to
Mm,
get to like the end process in the
yeah.
sense, like you get that physique, but it's cool to look this way. It's, don't get me wrong. But again, when you're kind of on this side of it, it just, like you said, you just kind of lose that little bit of fire there. And I remember going through the Flex magazines, of course, not the greatest information, but
Right.
man, just diving in there and seeing like photos of Lee Haney or something, like, damn,
Yeah.
man, I want to get after it and do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very cool time period. I wonder how many people either go to competition or coaching for that reason. So I don't know if you're aware, I actually got 6 months of coaching with Steve Hall. And it wasn't because I was like, this is going to completely change my physique or anything like that. It was just, I've been doing literally the same routine for 2 years, and it's very different. Like, I would say my training is closer probably, it's like your style, like maybe 3 4 days a week, like low to moderate volume. Like, that's just kind of what I've gravitated towards. And with Revive Stronger and Steve Hall, it's generally higher volume, higher frequency, more reps in the tank, things like that. And I would say the biggest thing for me was that it was just fun. Like, there really was this, like, the first month we're talking about it, we're getting the routine ready. Like, I'm excited for it again. And like that, to me, not that I would necessarily say to coach just for that reason, but I think can be helpful, like just as a motivation tool itself.
For sure. I love Steve. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I love Steve. And I do that with some of my athletes. It's like, I know in the back of my mind, like, okay, if I change a bunch of variables, it's probably going to skew things a little bit harder to interpret what's going on.
Mm,
But at the same time, like when you say, okay, here's the new program, like
right.
the energy, they just light up.
Yeah.
You can tell, like, okay, there's another level of fire that they're ready to kind of get after it again. So I think sometimes change is important. Um, Again, I've been doing this for so long, so I've tried almost everything at this point. So it's
Right.
almost like, okay, what keeps me going?
Yeah.
And I've had to come to terms probably the last, I would say, year. Like, I'm realizing, like, okay, my gains are pretty much tapped out.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate the fact that it takes a lot of energy to maintain the
Hmm.
muscle mass that I do have. You still have to put the effort in. I
Yeah.
mean, if I go into the gym and just, fluff it every single session, eventually my body is going to be like, okay, I don't need this much size anymore. So let's let
Yeah.
go of it, because it requires a lot of energy to maintain that size.
So what's that looking
So,
like now? Are there changes that you've made, let's say, to the last season or two, or is it just kind of, hey, I know it works, I'm just sticking with that?
so I would say probably before I started dieting for this, or I don't want to say dieting, more of a lifestyle change. So up
Hmm.
until July, August of last year, I was, assertively trying to see if I can gain any more muscle, because I knew it was like my last little off season to see if
Yeah.
that's going to actually happen or not.
Yep.
So yeah, I was just basically just lifting, trying to increase loads and try to increase volume here and there where I could. But what I realized is that my body is like, yeah, you can do this, but it's the aftermath. You know,
Mm.
when you got this much training mileage on your body and you got, you're 50, I'm now approaching 51 in like 10 days.
Okay.
So it's like recovery just isn't where it used to be. So,
Yeah.
I kind of just, waking up, in pain quite often. It's
Really.
like, is this really worth it? Is this worth putting myself through all this effort to maybe see half a percent, 1%
Right.
progress?
Well, what were you
Where
doing specifically to try to push?
specifically,
Yeah.
yeah, just trying to, more so trying to get strength, like just trying to increase the loading,
Okay.
not like one rep maxes, but like
Okay.
the working weight as far as for reps, trying to just elevate that. Cause I can look at history and see where my physique, because you kind of see your physique kind of do the waving, right? Like
Right.
sometimes it looks really good, other times you're like you're off.
Hmm.
And usually when I'm up on a high, my training performance is representative of that.
Yeah.
Like it's where I'm at my strongest. And, I'm not the science guy of the community, but I can look across the board at some of the elite level natural bodybuilders and I don't only say, okay, what's the common thing amongst many of these guys and gals?
Hmm.
They're strong.
Yeah.
They work with heavy loads for reps. So that's, of course, that's what I was trying to do. But again, my body's just like, hey, Jeff, you're not 20 anymore.
Yeah.
You're 50. So yeah,
So
I
you
just kind
actually
of
actively not really trying to increase the weight at this point then. You're more like saying like, okay, here's the weight I'm going to use and just focus on the quality of the set.
yes and no. I mean, if there's days where I feel good and I can increase the weight, I'm going to do it. If
Hmm.
there's other days where I'm like, yeah, probably don't feel all that great, I'm going to back it off.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, like back in 2013, 2014, that's probably where I backed off the most, over my career as far as leaving more reps in reserve,
Mm.
that type of thing. So on average, during that 2014 prep, I was probably in the neighborhood of like 1 to 4, 1 to 5,
Reps
you
or,
know?
oh, reps in reserve.
Yeah. And in the past, it would always be more like one,
Yeah. Yeah.
zero, zero, maybe
Right.
two, but just far more intense. I didn't see any side. Actually, I was probably at my biggest, and
Mm.
it's not because of the training. It's multifactorial because it's partly that. It's partly managing fatigue a lot better through the dieting process, and making sure that the rate of loss was really conservative.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving parts to all this, and I think sometimes like we kind of just get caught up into looking at maybe one or two variables and then thinking like that's the reason why what we're seeing. And
Right.
especially online, that's kind of one of my pet peeves when I see someone, this is what I look like, and this is what I look like. And they show one thing they did. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Right.
yeah, there's probably a lot of moving parts there, because we're human,
Yeah.
you know?
It's very hard to, I think for some of us almost to accept that because like for a long time, I mean, I know you had like a Mike Mentzer kind of background, right? Like at one point you were like,
Hmm.
and the same with me and DC training and all of that. And so it's something like I've talked about in a few groups is it's almost hard to accept this idea that a 2 to 4 RAR is just as good.
Yeah.
But I mean, we do
I
see,
struggle with that.
yeah, it's just like,
I
how is
still
that
struggle with
possible?
it because I want to train hard,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it just sounds counterintuitive, but I think we have enough examples of people doing that now. I mean, Steve Hall being a great example from his last competition to the current competition. I mean, he totally transformed. And I mean, not that he doesn't go to failure, but he'll do kind of like the Mike Jutel ramping, like 4 RAR and then 3 RAR, et cetera. So a lot of his time is not going to failure, and he made tremendous gains. So that is something I still on a
But
conceptual
what's
basis.
key is it's not like he's like training at a 4 reps in reserve and he's not trying to progress in that realm,
Exactly.
whether the reps or the loads are moving up over
Right.
time.
Exactly.
So I think that's something that's kind of getting lost too, is like people just kind of look at that reps in reserve and that's the only thing they're looking at. But it's
Mhm.
like actually watch the person train. Like if you watch Steve train, I mean, it's pretty intense. It's not
Yeah.
like he's training like really soft, and he has probably a really good gauge on his reps in reserve. Where if you look at someone else, you kind of look at it and they're like, yeah, this is 4 in the tank. You're like, no, dude, this is like 8 in the tank.
Right. Right.
So there's a huge discrepancy with all that. Like what the quality of actually what you're doing in the gym, I think is going to matter a lot more than what's on paper.
Yeah, that was one of the big takeaways I got from training with him is that, an individual set, for example, was easier because I was used to always going like 0 or 1 RAR. But with the higher volume, with 5 days per week instead of 3 to 4, the actual training period, all things considered, might have even been harder, and it was like, okay, if I'm doing multiple sets of a 3 RAR, that's still pretty damn hard, if it's a true 3 RAR. So
Right. Right. And then you kind of want, okay, if you're doing 2 hard assets or 3 or 4 with 3 in the tank, which one's more
yeah.
optimal? I mean, you're splitting hairs there. It's probably, and I don't have many more hairs left. So it's like, it's not even worth stressing over it. So I kind of look at it like, okay, if I go into a training session and I have good energy, but I don't have a lot of time or something like that, like, okay, I'm going to do a couple sets that's pretty close to failure just to ensure that I am getting that stimulus.
Yep.
Or if I don't feel like training really hard, I'm going to leave more in the tank and just maybe add another set or two in there
Yeah.
just to make sure I'm touching everything up. So I think we just, this is the Brains and Gains podcast, huh? I'm not the brains guy, but I mean, just
You
it's
got all
it's
the
kind of
gains.
common sense, and I think a lot of us tend to overthink it and
Yep.
overanalyze it, and we want to think of it as either it's black or white when it's really like there's so many shades of gray that we can be working in.
Yeah.
It's just getting people to relax. That's the main thing as a coach. I would say I'm trying to get people to relax in the process.
Yeah, that is definitely, I mean, I have a few clients right now who are actually just doing very well. Just every week, they just kind of message me, "Yep, this is going well," and they've kind of calmed down. But I do consistently have people where I'll go through a whole thing and they'll be like, "Well, I just need to cut. I need to get lean." I'm like, "Well, look, like, I'll help you with whatever your goal is, but maybe consider this, and I would take the time to do this and this." And then they'll say, "Okay, but like, I just know I can't be happy unless I do this." And so they're going to do whatever they want to do anyway, and they're stressed out about it. And the thing is, like, I can understand it because I was there at one point. It's just it's hard to almost feel like you're helpless to help them when like they're just so stressed about it, so ingrained, and they wouldn't be able to just step back.
We're all like, I mean, I was there too. We're all
Yeah.
like that, and I think our experiences, help us to really cement like what exactly we should be doing. And it's more the I think of what's more important than just like these little minutia things that seem to come up a lot. Like, oh, if we do this, we're going to optimize this by 1%. It's like
Hmm.
the basics and the big picture stuff, I think, is where people need to look first and foremost. People get lost in the detail, but it's actually the big rocks that's going to take you to where you really want to go.
Yeah.
But it's like my son, man. If I tell him, okay, don't be doing that, or hey, we need to do it this way, and try to show him. That's the latest thing. I was like, okay, you need to have humility. He's like, what's that? So I have to kind of explain to him what that means.
Hmm.
Be open minded, be willing for me to teach you, and don't get like, defensive. So, but sometimes it's like, well, I'm just going to have to go hands off on this one and just let him experience it. And whether he's successful or not, it's going to cement in his brain, like, okay, either, yeah, this is the right way to do it, or no, this is not the right way to do it.
Yeah.
So I think
Has he
sometimes like
already?
you can, like some athletes, you can tell them till you're like blue in the face, but
Mhm.
sometimes they just, no, I want to cut, but it's not the right thing for them to do. It's like, okay,